Do you want to go for it, Nene? I know you got a lot of content.
We have 45 slides to get to today,
Perfect.
so I'm afraid we can't wait very much.
I had to leave right at 125.
I'll try to speed it up. Okay.
Get up that one.
23 minutes, start. Okay, hi everyone. So, this is a quick recap of last week. We discussed what a blockchain is. A blockchain is a decentralized cloud. It uses a linking system through a hash tags for data. A hashing function is essentially it turns any data into a short unique code that cannot be reversed back to the original data. And today we'll pick up at knots. I'll try to make this as comprehensible to those of you who weren't there last week. So a hashing function. So each of your spreadsheets are blocks will contain 5 elements. The hash value of a previous spreadsheet, your content, or your transactions essentially, your knots, which we'll be discussing today, a hash value of its own, and the timestamp of when it was created. So this is how blocks are linked to each other. Again, this is the first block, and then you have your data, and you have your previous hash. What you'll do is you'll put both of these into a hashing function, and you'll get your hash. And then you'll use that hash as the new input, so you'll take this and the previous hash, and then you'll add it to the hashing function, and then you'll get your hash, and so on and so forth. So, before we can even talk about knots, we have to talk about Bitcoin. So, what is Bitcoin? Without reading, just in general, what do you think Bitcoin is?
Is that electronic money?
Yeah, like electronic currency, electronic coins that exist digitally.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds about right. So Bitcoin is a decentralized network system. That's about it. It is specifically created to enable peer-to-peer transactions without the need for a centralized authority like a government or a bank. So it's basically a system that's designed to trade value without authority. So that said, other tokens using blockchain technology don't necessarily have to be used for this purpose. It might serve different purposes, such as making its systems more efficient, so on and so forth. So, before Bitcoin, this is why Bitcoin exists and why before Bitcoin you could not have no middleman. So, before Bitcoin, digital files could be copied pretty easily. If you sent a file over to your friend, you were essentially sending him a copy, correct? Physical money is a little bit different. Due to the laws of physics and time and space, two things, a single thing cannot be in the same place in different places at the same time, right? But in the digital world, it's just a copy of one another. You can't exactly have that, and that's why we need man. So online, we rely on banks and card companies to prevent double spending, which is essentially what it sounds like. The same money being used twice. So they maintain full control of the entire system. They can block transactions, charge fees, whatever. So Bitcoin essentially changed this. Using a public tamper-proof ledger called a blockchain, it made digital money basically act like physical cash. So no more double spending, essentially, because that's the main issue. This allowed direct transactions without the middleman. So, before we can talk about knots, again, we have to talk about Bitcoin money. So, Bitcoin money, I'm sure you've heard that around, correct? It's the blockchain relies on thousands of nodes, basically little mini systems of those of you who were there last week. In Bitcoin, they're called miners because Bitcoin mining, pretty obvious. Then they work together to help run a database, essentially. But this can be pretty costly, and no one wants to do expensive things for free, right? So to incentivize these nodes, they are offered compensation, and for simplicity, we'll call it a reward. So with thousands and thousands of nodes in the network, how do we choose which miner earns the reward? Would anyone like to take a guess?
We work with whoever has the systems, right? Well, if you have your system, you get the reward. Whoever buys the biggest amount of technology for...
Essentially, yeah. I'll explain how that works. And this is where Bitcoin's creator, Satoshi Nakamoto, a fake babe, came up with a system called proof of work. So this is where knots comes into play. Basically, nonce is how they choose which person gets the reward. So, a nonce, that's short for number only used once, is a unique random number essentially that's used during the mining process to decide who gets the reward. So let me show you how this works. I opened this up. So, that's an app. So here is the hash generator. For those of you who saw it last week, let me sit down because this is a little bit easier. So let's say we have our data. So Alice, please notice that the hash changes constantly. If I even add a space, it'll change. Transferred 10 gold coins to pop. Let's say. So you have your data, right? And let's say to get the reward, you have to be the first to find certain condition. Let's say that condition is it starts with 0, for example. So essentially, what you'll do is essentially you'll add numbers randomly until you get ones that start with 0. Okay, this was really short. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That is your nonce. It's essentially the number that satisfies the condition. So, where is it? Which app? Okay. So, I know you kind of answered this question, but I would like you to answer it now, just for comprehension purposes. Why do we need a nonce?
To have the value of your.
Yeah.
It's like a tracking node, right? It's what represents the block.
Not really. So, this right here is the nonce. It's basically if we had a condition for the hash, okay, to get the reward, you have to be the first person to make it start with 0. That number is the thing that, when added onto the data, is what makes the condition true.
So it's like a key, sort of.
Kind of, I guess. So,
So this prevents the double spending. This does. The new code. This is what stops people from double spending, because every code is unique.
not necessarily. This is just kind of the system that incentivizes the nodes to keep the network running. What actually prevents the double spending is how the blockchain works. Essentially, blockchain is a system where you transfer data, but when that data is transferred, it cannot be changed. So there'll be concrete proof. Oh, you already spent this X amount of coins. You cannot double spend that. That's essentially how it works. I hope that was understandable. Do I need to clarify anything?
So you mean we can have so many nonces which satisfy that hash value, but the one who discovered the false non will be the winner or something like that?
So in other words, whoever has the most technology and the faster computer,
Can you come up with the non-fast
they
way?
get the nonce.
Yeah, so to determine which miner earns the reward, that's just what I did. They'll test different nonce numbers and add the nonce to the block data and check if it meets the requirements. This process is called Bitcoin mining. There can be many nonces. It's not just one number that will make the value 0. It's just whoever finds it first gets it. So, just like Mr. David said, more computational power, the higher chance you'll
So the
get
faster our computer system is quicker to get it.
Yeah,
Before
because,
anyone else takes it away.
yes.
You are like it.
Yeah, because if you had many computers, it could all be testing different numbers at once. It would be really quick. So, the higher the chances of getting the block reward. This is why miners continuously scale their workings if they're not just a hobbyist and doing it for fun. So here the Bitcoin mining difficulty. So the algorithm might require a hash value that starts with 4 zeros or 6 zeros. I'll tell you why later. The number of leading zeros kind of represents how difficult it is to mine a block, essentially. This is used to ensure that the Bitcoin is mined consistently every 10 minutes, and it automatically adjusts the difficulty every 2 weeks based on how much total computational power there is in the system. So here's Bitcoin's mining difficulty. You can see it's very vastly increased over the years. So a higher difficulty just means that there's more computational power in the network. So you can see here at the start there wasn't much, but now there's a load. So maybe there's like, I'm not sure how many zeros there has to be in the
G is
hash
the
rate.
gigabytes or what? So
No, this is essentially just saying like how difficult it is to like mine a Bitcoin at the moment, to keep it consistently mining every 10 minutes. So why does a block have to be produced exactly around every 10 minutes? Well, that's because, again, blockchain is a system where everyone needs to be on the same page, right? Because if it wasn't synchronized, like if some people mine the block in 10 minutes, maybe some in 12, no one would be synchronized, and some people would be working with outdated data, which would cause a split in the blockchain, and then you'd have like trouble like getting the entire community's consensus, essentially. Block size limitations, faster transactions in the same period of time obviously means there's going to be like more transactions. And because there's more transactions, the block has to be bigger. This would exclude the smaller miners or like hobbyists, like for example you or me, because again, you're going to need a big, like more bandwidth, more storage, more power. It's going to be very difficult for us, and it would be a lot easier for like the bigger companies. So, game theory, this is pretty fun. So, anyone can actually change Bitcoin's code at any time. However, the power to change the code is up to the hands of the nodes and the people running the system, essentially the nodes and miners. In other words, thousands of nodes and miners can essentially decide which version of Bitcoin is the real one. And the version of the code that's adopted by the majority, so 51%, is the one that's considered the dominant one and the one that's fallen. I mean, you could essentially change the code by yourself if you own 51% of Bitcoin, which that's expensive and probably not happening anytime soon. Okay, miners, like I said before, are economically motivated. They want money, essentially. So they'll only adopt changes they believe will benefit them. This makes updates to Bitcoin's code rare, since us achieving consensus through the community, a thousand people, including miners and node operators, is extremely hard, essentially. And it also, because it's so hard, it makes sure that the feature, like 21 million cap for how many Bitcoin can be made, is like in place, essentially. So, miners have no incentive to support inflation, essentially, because again, they're economically motivated. Why would they want to like devalue their own thing? So increasing the supply of Bitcoin would make them less. Wait, that's more of it. I'm sorry. So increasing the supply would devalue Bitcoin, and they would hurt their own financial interest, correct? Because of this, it helps in itself preserve Bitcoin's economic scarcity and value. So, proof of work and environmental concern. This is what Mr. David brought up. You've probably heard around that Bitcoin mining can raise environmental concerns. This stems from the fact that proof of work, the system I was talking about earlier, is really energy consuming. So, I'm not going to entirely disprove this, so to speak, but I'm just going to raise a few points. So first, it's important to understand that, again, if any of you are science teachers that work specifically with physics and electricity, you will know that electricity must be used immediately unless it's stored in a battery of some sort, which those are expensive. If not used, any excess electricity is going to go to waste and will be discarded. To account for this inefficiency, electricity providers usually pass the bill to us to make up for their lost money. So imagine they made $1 million baht investment worth of electricity, and they made 1 million units, but they only sold 200,000. what they're going to do to break even is they're going to increase from 1 unit equals 1 baht. It's going to be 1 unit equals 5 baht now, so they'll break even. So this is going to be important. So you remember how Bitcoin miners are? They want money, right? Essentially. They're always looking for the lowest possible cost of electricity. That's where they can cut cost the most, since that's what they're using a lot of. For this reason, many miners negotiate with power supply plants to use their unused electricity. And Bitcoin mining, since it's highly flexible, they can turn off their computer on and off whenever they want, right? So this means they'll only mine when prices are low, which is essentially when no one is using the electricity, which means there's excess electricity. So they'll be using all that excess electricity. So they absorb surplus energy and usually from renewable sources, which can help stabilize the grid and, oh dear, are we running out of time? Caused by excess electricity. Using those otherwise wasted electricity helps improve system efficiency, and they can help service providers lower the cost for us as well. So they enhance energy system efficiency and reduce the environmental impact caused by excess electricity. So there's also that point to keep in mind. So this is important if you're investing in Bitcoin. Bitcoin does not pay dividends. The only way you can gain value from Bitcoin is through capital gain. So it's essential to understand now because with stocks you have dividends, right? But this we can't. So we have to know what can drive the prices higher. So this is just to prove that I am somewhat trustworthy, hopefully. I invested in Bitcoin myself 3 years ago, and I've been holding it ever since. At that time, I didn't know much about it, but my dad talked about it to me, so I was like, oh, this kind of makes sense actually. So therefore, I decided to buy some, and I'm happy I did. Honestly, thank you, Father.
Besides by a lot.
I think I have another cryptocurrency that's more. I'll touch on that the week after we come after our break, hopefully. So, I think Bitcoin is more similar to gold, so I'll be comparing those two instead of money, okay? So, here's the similarities. This will be important later of why we're comparing Bitcoin and gold. So, Bitcoin and gold, here we have scarcity, store value, decentralization, and durability. Both Bitcoin and gold are scarce. Bitcoin is limited to 21 million Bitcoins, and gold is a finite resource. Obviously, there's more of it deeper in the earth, but that's also more expensive to produce. Bitcoin is seen as a hedge against inflation, and gold, well, historically a safe haven. What need I say more? Bitcoin is decentralized, as it is not controlled by a single authority or government, and so is gold. And Bitcoin cannot be destroyed since it's online, unless you break the computer. And gold is just physically durable, and it doesn't degrade over time. And the similar properties, Bitcoin can be transferred globally through the internet, while gold has policies, I believe, that prevents you from carrying a certain amount of gold over the border. I don't know too much about those policies. So, Bitcoins can be divided to 100 billion satoshis, which are smaller units, and gold can be divided to grams, ounces, so on and so forth, but nowhere as small as 100 million, right? And there's recognition. Bitcoin, while it's gaining recognition, it's not currently recognized, and gold is recognized as a valuable commodity globally.
Danny, you're saying that one of those 21 million coins can be broken into 100 million smaller units?
Yeah, think of it kind of like, it's kind of like a dollar and we have your cents, kind of that. So at some point in time, I began to doubt, and I asked my dad if Bitcoin's intangibility was a hoax, essentially, it's kind of fake money. I don't think that anymore, but he says that it's a feature, and he reminded me what money really is. This is for those of you who came on the first week. So money is basically a battery of your hard work. The sun shines on the earth, and the plants take that sunshine and convert it to energy, and animals eat that plants and convert that into energy. And then we eat the animals, or the plants if you're vegetarian, and we use that energy to produce other things and transfer the energy. So, from the start to the end, it's essentially from transferring energy from one source to the next, to the next, to the next. So, since energy itself is intangible, why is it so weird that using something intangible to represent it why does it not make sense, essentially? So, gold's kind of just like a physical stand-in and gold and money, essentially, so physical stand-in for energy. So, but that was when our technology was less advanced. So, I have to go really fast. I'm just gonna speed talk. So, my dad essentially shared with me that Bitcoin would probably steal market share from gold, since they're kind of like sandwichy for each other, since one's kind of intangible, one's not. I did a little research back then by asking most of my classmates if they would prefer gold or Bitcoin if their parents asked them. Every single one of them said Bitcoin. So it's just a little experiment. And one day their parents will pass on and pass their wealth to them, right? So they might sell that gold and buy Bitcoin instead, because they may believe it's the more valuable option. So here's the market cap of gold versus Bitcoin. Gold, Bitcoin, you can see all these companies here. Market cap is basically the total value of an asset. It's calculated by taking the price of an asset in total units and just multiplying. So you can see here that the market cap of gold is 17 trillion and Bitcoin has 2 trillion. Bitcoin has a lot of space to grow. And as my generation essentially grows up and we get inheritance, we could essentially just sell gold and buy Bitcoin instead. So, next hypothesis. He believes that maybe within the next few years, hedge funds would diversify their portfolios by buying Bitcoin as well, since Bitcoin's prices shoot to the moon, skies, and stars, as we've seen over the past few years. So, it could be very significant. He was 80% confident that more governments would adopt Bitcoin, as we've seen with El Salvador and maybe the United States soon. Due to evolving economic and geopolitical situations. So recently, here, President-elect Donald Trump, since he's not actually the president yet, announced plans to create a strategic Bitcoin reserve for the U.S. So here is the Bitcoin Act. I don't think they've actually passed the bill yet.
I don't think so, not yet.
So implement a 1 million unit Bitcoin purchase program, a set a period of time to acquire a total stake of approximately 5% of total Bitcoin supply, mirroring the size and scope of gold reserves held by the United States. Essentially, they're using this as like a strategic reserve. I think they're planning to do this over the course of five years, I believe. So how do I look at it now? This is my hypothesis. So I think that if the U.S. government passes the bill, the other countries will follow suit, because it's the U.S. So since the government's kind of doing it, major corporations will likely follow suit, because if the government does it, why shouldn't I? Exactly. And they might start allocating a portion of their assets to it, and some of the wealthiest individuals in the world will likely also follow suit. So, there are only 21 million Bitcoins. That's the hard cap. You cannot go above that. There are currently 7 billion people on this earth. So you can see how that would be like. Okay, disclaimer before I go, and since we're running out of time. This is just my opinion. It might not turn out to be true. This is just for learning purposes, though I do hope it's going to be true, because that'd be really interesting. And do your own research, make your own decisions. Don't take what I say with no grains of salt. Take it with a grain of salt. So, next week originally, but probably next time we open up, and the next Wednesday after.
I think I want you to take all of this information in and digest it, and then in the new year we can, make New Year's resolutions.
So I'll be sharing my insights about something called the energy webchain. It's another blockchain, and we'll see how it drives green energy transition using, again, blockchain technology. We'll also dive into my investment hypothesis for this, so you can kind of form your own. I love this project so much. I think it's really cool since it's held eco-friendly, essentially. and I've invested in more than Bitcoin because I really love it. So I'll tell you all about it after break.
Hey, next year.
Next year. See you then. So, thank you. Any questions?
No.
Currently?
Thank you.